Hello, my name's Andy Schmuckler, asking the question, what is the value of life? I just want to observe that there's a whole lot of America that couldn't handle a question like that very well because they don't really believe that the value is anything quite real. It's a matter of opinion, is one thing. It's merely subjective, and that value is more or less in the eye of the beholder, and there's no basis for considering one opinion ahead of another. I encountered a lot of that kind of thing over decades in discussing things with liberal culture in one way or another. There's a tendency to think that if you can't show it, measure it, find it objectively, that it's not real. And I claim that value, when you consider it clear-headedly in an evolutionary perspective, is something that's real, that it's important, and that it's life-serving. Basically, that the meaning of value depends on the existence of some creatures for whom there's such a thing as better and worse, experientially. If there were nothing for whom anything mattered, there could be no hierarchy of better to worse. It's all the same because it doesn't matter to anything. But through the evolutionary process, life creates value. It creates it by generating, among other things, a bunch of species for whom there's a better and there's a worse, and value comes into the world. It does matter whether a kitten is being stroked and is purring or if it's being tortured. There is a better and worse that is of the only kind, ultimately, in terms of positive in the experiential respect. That is what would be valuable. You want an arrangement which maximizes the extent to which creatures can thrive, meaning that they get more of the better and less of the worse. So I won't get into the people who have mistaken the evil for the good. But there is, if you can find a coherent force that consistently makes things worse, you might as well regard it as evil. But liberal, secular America didn't have all that much respect for the ultimate importance of a moral dimension. But there is truly a moral dimension once you understand that the experiential realm is the only place and the real place where value is taking place. What is the net experiential positive to negative? The good is a world that's happy. A bad world is a world that's suffering. What is the value of life? Well, at the individual level, it does seem that most of us want it. So it must be of positive value. I think there are some spiritual traditions where it's described mostly as suffering, but most of us, I think, are highly motivated to stay alive. And in the movies, they'll say, "You'll wish you had never been born," before they do something absolutely terrible to our protagonist. The implication is that you don't wish, people don't in general go around wishing they'd never been born. And then I think about, well, we would have been selected for wanting to be alive, even if it was more trouble than it was worth, because the desire to be alive, to get one's head above the water so you can breathe again. The people who do, the ancestors who didn't have an impulse in that direction would be less likely to get their DNA into the future than the ones that had a survival instinct. I think that phrase is a legit phrase. So maybe it's not necessarily a positive to be alive. Clearly, there are times when people are not glad to. If you look at humanity altogether at one time, I think the great majority of people would put being alive as being on the positive side. But there would be people who would like for death to come sooner. Which means that, legitimately speaking, life isn't necessarily a positive in terms of. I've recently thought of being able to put the issue, while life creates value, is life itself of positive value? I don't feel like I know how to prove that it is. You imagine two planets, one of them lifeless, like we imagine Venus and Mars and the rest to be, and one of them with life on it, which is what's happened here on this planet, a living planet with a certain Gaia stuff going on, versus this dead thing that's just a rock and there's no life process going on our moon or any of that stuff. If one of them gets destroyed, does it matter which one? Is it of negative or positive value to choose to one rather than the other to be destroyed? There's a part of me that wants to affirm, yeah, what's happening on this planet is really special. It's marvelous. It's such an incredible thing, this life business that's happened on this planet, that it would be really a shame. But then I find myself wondering, well, a shame. Well, how is that working in terms of if value exists only in the experiential quality of creatures? Would it be a shame if there were no living planet here in this solar system? I find something so beautiful sometimes I see in this living planet, something that feels sacred to me. I don't know quite how to combine that sense that this overall thing of, like the biosphere, especially considered independently of the ways we've been destroying it. I think that there's something beautiful that's been created. And I don't know how to combine that with, well, what's it like that there's all this nature red in tooth and claw creatures, dying before they can reproduce, and all the stuff that goes on in life to create this biosphere. There are a lot of things not being. Um, if those living things are experiencing what's happening to them, there's a lot of pain that can be involved in what's all that's going on in the planet. What is the balance? I don't know how to answer that, but there's a part of my heart that just loves life in the way that when I saw on Avatar the tree in which they lived, I was very moved because, for one thing, and I guess I must not be unique because the people who characterize that vibrantly living world the way they did, they utilized a tree that's so enormous that a whole civilization can exist up in its branches, which the force of evil comes in to destroy, which is painful. I grew up on movies where that thing wouldn't have ended in such a terrible condition. I think that the culture has moved from where we were in, whatever, 50s and 60s, a sense that culture is still something that we can come out okay. That Avatar communicates a new sense. We have screwed up so much since then that we're not going to be altogether okay. We're not going to come out of this unscathed. Life creates value. And whether value is of life, life is of value if you say the total of experience of everything that has experience is such that the positive outweighs the good, the negative, that the betterness of the whole experiential realm is on the positive side of zero. Or is it on the negative? I don't know how to judge. But I know that when I've had moments of experiencing the sacred, including sometimes in dreams where huge trees appeared as symbols of everything I held sacred, I think there's something wonderful about Earth. Even with the suffering that's come. It's worth fighting to get our civilization so that it serves the needs of life, both within the members and in the whole biosphere. And recognizing that the secular worldview should understand that this assignment is just as valid and real and sacred as what we experience in the movies. It is for real that we are fighting for the good if we decide that life is good. And I'm willing to make that decision and say that we are called upon to do vigorously what our heroes do in those good versus evil battles. They don't worry about, is there really anything evil here? They depict it for us. Look at this Trump presidency. Isn't that a pretty vivid, multidimensional depiction of a force of destruction? Consistently doing things that make things worse. it's not too late for the secular worldview to learn the lesson that's here, which is there is such a thing as a coherent force that consistently works to make things worse. And it's important for liberal America to recognize that there is a standard, however vague, on which things can be judged, not just subjective, not just a matter of opinion. Some of those, but at a fundamental level, evolution has created in us an inherent system of value, vague as it may be, but overlapping and showing great parallels in cultures. There is a better and a worse, and it corresponds with making the world more whole versus making it more broken. So if we want to save life, we've got to fight this force of evil that's been rising visibly for over 30 years. And to see now for what it is, and to look into that past in the pro-democracy, liberal, secular America that failed to see this thing rising and fight it when it would have been easier to defeat by far than now, when it commands pretty much the entire government of the United States and requires something almost on the order of an insurgency to save American democracy. Why wasn't this seen earlier? That question. And here's how it can be seen now. And I present that at abetterhumanstory.org. What we're up against is something that most of liberal America had no sense could exist. A force of evil. And the side of the good needs people who are as impassioned as our heroes in those Lord of the Rings and Star Wars and Avatar kinds of movies, where our passions to save the good from the evil get enlisted. Those passions are there because the evolutionary perspective put that potential way to feel as a human being in us. That tells us something. It wouldn't be in us had it not been that those of our ancestors who are getting into this direction of having that kind of a spiritual, moral passion were more likely to get their DNA into the future to become us than those that lacked it. There is a capacity and there's a set of feelings. There's a variety of things which I've written about, our inborn experiential tendencies that are there, and the evidence that they're being there constitutes irrefutable, pretty much, evidence that having it there, having that experiential realm, helped our ancestors make decisions and take actions that favored their ability to get their DNA into the future and become our ancestors. That's basically what evolutionary perspective means. Things get put in from structures and organs and all that to also experiential tendencies, which are there as a kind of a map of this is the way this motivates people to act in a way that will help the cause of life that's trying to get into the future through them. It's life-serving. It can be assumed about those things, that the impact that they had on whatever it is our ancestors did because of them was more likely than not to help them, to give them an advantage over those who lack those tendencies. That's a reality. It's an isomorphic map with what works in the world. We have a way of experiencing things which leads to our being motivated to act in the ways that we act that have the beneficial effect on our survival. So that means that as we try to respond to our own needs and also to safeguard um, uh, the persistence of humankind and our own descendants who are going to be living with the world we leave to them. We should recognize that life requires us to listen to what guidance is available to us. What is the path of life that we are obliged or motivated, naturally motivated, to go down? It's clear that one side of our political battle is not on the side of life. It doesn't mind killing people in foreign countries that are dying of diseases we might have cured or dying of starvation that we might have fed. They don't mind that they're uh, disrupting the lives of a lot of innocent and capable people who have devoted their lives to some degree, having some kind of altruistic sense of serving the American people and treating them deliberately cruelly. Their position, we cannot talk about climate change. A complete sellout of the values of life for the values of greed. It's interesting how often in mythology, um, greed versus life comes up, like the Midas touch and she turns to gold. Avatar, greed versus life. Climate change, they can't even talk about it now. Can you imagine? What is the value of life? The value of life is something that also has a realm of the potential. What kind of world could we make? I think at the human level, there is a lot of room for improvement. The extent to which the human civilization is organized now in a way that maximizes the fulfillment of human beings. We'll just deal with the human beings aspect. I think there's a huge range of greater fulfillment possible. Self-fulfillment and self-actualization. There is a sense in which the ideal human life is a path where the person becomes, in some sense, a fulfillment of their best potential. In a way, you might say that that's the definition of the human good. To become the best possible ourselves. And that includes the best possible gladness to be alive. And I think that what I know about education, for example, there is such a long distance from what's happening in the average schoolroom to the thing that would would actualize the full potential of these growing young human beings. I'm not faulting anybody in particular. People are doing what they can in the society that we've got. But if we want to think about what human life could be like if we were to navigate our way to the best possible way of organizing a human life so that the maximal number of people get as far as possible in that becoming the best possible themselves and finding fulfillment and so I think that one of the spiritual tasks among the many that we have, if we're going to get from here to there, is to ask ourselves, why aren't we getting it better together? And also, what would it look like if we did get it together better? One question looking backwards to see the shortcomings in our civilization that have gotten in the way. And then one also looking to the future and saying, well, this is where we got to shoot for. If we're going to create a civilization, and also in America, in which human thriving is maximized, in which decisions get made that lead the country further and leave the human international global order further toward that world in which people truly could find the fulfillment of the potential for rich, meaningful, positive life that's born into us and that we depend on, among other things, we depend in part on what our world offers us and imposes upon us and does to us, all kinds of things. There is an evolutionary process that we ought to be envisioning about what it would look like if the world were organized such that we made the best possible realization of human potential on a global basis, maintained the peace, lived in harmony with the planet, and helped each human being live a life that was rewarding and made them part of a benign, lifeful world in which the best of our human potential is playing a much larger role than what we see happening on the planet today, where we've got Vladimir Putin and a Hamas and a Netanyahu fascist government and a Donald Trump playing these big roles. How do you get to a world which doesn't have such things in it and that can live on this planet for the long haul? Thank you for listening. Subscribe, like, whatever. And above all, if I encourage you to check out whether I'm entitled to claim that there's something on my website that makes a lot of sense about what's happened to our species and what's happened in America. And it's been laid out systematically to convey that picture, because that picture might actually be helpful. I have believed since I got first hit by a lightning bolt that led to that book in 1970. We are better creatures than we thought we have been taught that we are. We are up against something that was not a function of our nature, but of an inevitable